What's up, you guys? Sean Ross Sapp here. It is September 10th, technically, even though we'll have this listed as the September 9th show. I'm here with Showdown Joe Ferraro. We are talking UFC 215. Joe, plenty to talk about tonight.
Oh, controversies. Yeah, controversy, fantastic performances, systematic performances, beatdowns. Referees should have been stopping fights earlier. Retirements, guys hanging up their gloves.
You know what I think it'll take? Maybe somebody dying under the watch of Edmonton before they fix. Oh, wait, no. Evidently, that won't do it. They want more people to die in hand-to-hand combat, apparently.
Well, I know referee Kyle Cardinal pretty well, and I'm not going to lie to you. I'm surprised as to how that fight continued to take place with Gavin Tucker and Rick Glenn. It just kind of was surprising to me, considering what happened with Tim Hague there, that I thought maybe they would actually be quote unquote jumping the gun to stop fights a little earlier because of the circumstances. Wouldn't have been surprised if, Big John McCarthy and the team were kind of telling the fighters or spoke to the fighters and the management, like, guys, look, we usually don't do this, but considering the circumstances, you better defend yourself or we're really going to have to stop these fights. So very surprised how it went down like that.
Yeah, there were a couple of instances on this show where I think that things looked a little bit rough, and the Sara Morass armbar where she let it go, still dislocated an elbow, and then the ref was like, I see you got this taken care of, type of thing. That was rough, but yeah, we have a championship fight. We have not a championship fight. We have a guy who might be competing in a championship fight pretty soon. Mm-hmm. So the far-reaching impact of this show will be felt for a while, but I saw former WWE wrestler Shane Helms tweet out, this is the show that you might lose fans on. And I kind of agree with him.
I don't know if you would lose fans. I think I know where Shane's going with this, but I don't know if you would lose fans with this show, because the fans that would have bought this show are the hardcore fans, or the fans that are already in tune with watching this UFC event or this type of UFC event, the caliber of this type of pay-per-view. It's not one of those, it's not a Conor McGregor card or a George St. Pierre card where that type of fight would have been quote unquote boring or controversial or whatever. And then you lose that mainstream fan. I think the fans that bought this pay-per-view are going to be UFC fans nonetheless.
Guys, if you all want to submit questions, head over to Fightful.com or FightfulPods.com. Go to our podcast page there, submit questions, or you can start a thread over on Fightful.com. We have all your news, results, videos, photos. We're going to have live tweets coming from the post-fight press conference from Carlos Toro. Post-Hurricane Irma, Carlos Toro getting it done. Calling out the rest of my team. Nobody accepted assignments this weekend except for a guy in a hurricane. So shout outs to Carlos Toro.
So crazy.
Me and David T's the only other ones doing our work. And who knows? I'm going to Orlando next week, so maybe I'm eating that hurricane too.
Well, yeah, I was supposed to go to Florida for the next Titan event. They postponed the event because they don't know what the infrastructure of Florida is going to be like. The event was supposed to take place September 29th. Mm-hmm. I believe that's what I promoted on the pay-per-view broadcast, or on the UFC Fight Pass broadcast. But I contacted Lex to make sure they were safe down there. Obviously, Jay-Z and everybody down there. And I was kind of going to bring up the fact that, hey, man, do I book the flight? Do I do it or not? But I didn't say anything. He's like, look, dude, based on what's going to happen here with Hurricane Irma, let's just postpone the show for now and deal with what happens with any infrastructure here. I'm like, dude, no problem, man. It's all good. Be safe down there.
Yeah, I mean, that's unfortunate to hear. I mean, I'm supposed to be there next week. I hope it all works out, honestly.
Yeah.
It's a bummer.
We'll know by tomorrow morning, right? Like, we'll know by tomorrow morning. That's when Irma's supposed to hit really hard?
Yeah, hopefully everybody there is doing okay.
Yeah, knock on wood. Yep.
But where do you want to start? Main event?
Main event. I mean, there's. I mean, I'm looking at the live chat right now, guys. If you're listening in and tuned in right now, live chat on the top right of your screen on the YouTube page, and there is some discussion as to who won. A lot of people are saying Shevchenko won. Easily could have made that argument. I thought Shevchenko's post-fight interview was absolutely fantastic and classic. She just lost her shit. I mean, that was amazing in my opinion. But That fifth round, I think, was the deciding round per se. Each round was pretty close. I saw your scorecards on Twitter. I pretty much agreed with them all. That last round, Sean, could have went either way because, you know, Amanda did get the takedown, but didn't do anything with it, while Shevchenko was on the bottom, kind of being active, but those aren't punches that are going to finish a fight. So it's just a weird round to score. So I can understand how two of the judges went one way, another judge went the other way.
So how do you score that takedown when it leads to Shevchenko landing? Maybe Nunes landed 2 or 3 strikes, maybe, and Shevchenko landed probably 10 or 11.
Yeah,
out of
yeah.
that.
It's so tough to score because you look at that type of situation and you go, okay, so in the stand-up realm, you're trying to finish the fight. Your striking is trying to cause damage and trying to finish the fight. You take an opponent down to the ground, now you are in control of where the fight is going to take place. Now that you've got control, what are you going to do to finish the fight? Because when you control someone, you've either got to advance your position or continue to finish them. Amanda didn't do that. But with Shevchenko on her back, she's not going to finish Amanda by throwing those strikes. So it's almost a neutralization point where you go back to the point where Amanda did take her down, but she didn't do anything. So she took control of the fight, but didn't do anything with it. It's a weird round to score.
Yeah, the fight, I had round 1 Nunes, round 2 Shevchenko on the back of Superman punches in 2017, which is crazy because I don't remember, you never see Superman punches in the UFC, let alone the very, very high levels of the UFC. Third round, I noticed that cut on Valentina's left shin, and she had used no energy, and Nunes had conserved her energy fairly well, too. Nunes really took advantage of Valentina not being mobile by landing leg kicks and took the round. Round 4 saw a lot of counter strikes from Valentina, which I thought was the clearest round of the fight, was that round 4 for Shevchenko. And then in the 5th, I thought Shevchenko outstruck Nunes. And then when Nunes landed that takedown, Shevchenko did more. So I had it Shevchenko. I'm not like outraged or anything. I know one thing. If you were to tell me that Shevchenko and Joanna were to fight at 125, I'm picking Joanna to saw through Shevchenko's legs all day the way that she fought against Nunes. Because
I saw you mention that tweet. My only rebuttal to that, Sean, is in a fight, if Shevchenko and Joanna are going to fight, you got to figure that Shevchenko is going to change her game plan.
Sure.
Because it's a different fighter. If she was to do that versus Joanna, those legs would be, you know, what happened to Gilbert Melendez would be the same thing that would happen to Shevchenko. I mean, she would just get eaten alive by those leg kicks. But at the same time, different fight, MMA math kind of works in a different way. But at the same time, I get your point there. I'm wondering now if Shevchenko is going to go look back at that first round. I'm like, I should have gave her that first round. I shouldn't have been as tentative because, I mean, everybody, including you and I and everyone probably in the chat and everyone that's ever watched MMA or watched Nunes fight automatically assumed that Shevchenko or that Amanda was going to come out and be explosive in that first round and at least the first 2 minutes of the second round. That wasn't necessarily the case. So while Valentina was sitting there trying to be tentative and trying to counterpunch, which is what she's really good at, it didn't really work out in her favor because she didn't do anything. I think you scored a 10-0 round 1. I was laughing about that.
There was a typo.
Okay. Well, Freudian slip, right? So yeah, I gotcha.
Yeah, and after we saw Shevchenko dispose of Pena the way that she did, you know, many people, they questioned like maybe Shevchenko was going to be the aggressor. And I thought based on how their first fight went with Nunes, I didn't think there was any chance of that. I thought she was really going to test the cardio of Nunes. I think Nunes knew that too. As we'll find out later on with the Ray Borg stuff, fighters are the most sensitive people on earth. And Nunes immediately went over and started to yell at the commentary team. Like, how dare you question what my strengths and weaknesses may be by wondering aloud on air, as is your job, if my cardio is up to par because I've never been past the third round before.
Yeah, no, that was kind of weird. But I've told you before. I've seen Amanda maybe 4 or 5 times, or at 4 or 5 different Titan events. She runs the show in the public there in front of all the fans, but she does operate in a bit of a different frequency. You've heard me say that before. So yeah, doing that was kind of weird. I mean, they're just doing their job. I'm looking at some of the comments in the live chat there. Justin H said Shevchenko was nervous. That's why, Joe. You could tell she had some cold feet. To Justin's point, and I don't know if you noticed this, Sean, did you notice when Buffer was making the announcement for Shevchenko, or not the announcement, the introduction at the beginning of the fight, Shevchenko and her corner did not look like very confident people going into this fight. They looked like there was something that was wrong, something was up. Whereas when you look at Amanda's corner, they're amped up, they're ready to go, and Amanda's just getting loosened up. So I did notice something kind of strange, something kind of weird from Valentina's side, but nervous, I don't know. I think maybe something else was wrong. I don't know. I mean, I know every fighter, and those guys, girls, anyone that tells you they're not nervous before a fight, they all are. Okay, they all are. They just, I mean, George always called it when he told me before, is like, all the butterflies you feel, you just got to put them sort of in a pattern. I mean, Elias and Sean Pearson and Frank Trigg, Matt Hughes has told me this. They're always nervous before a fight, but not scared per se. Not even nerves. They're ready. They're just anxious, if that makes sense. So there was something up with Justin, right? Or there was Justin. Sorry, Justin. There was something up with Valentina in her corner. It was kind of weird. I mean, did you notice it?
Yeah, and I also noticed that Nunes was like fist bumping Bruce Buffer before her intro. Yeah, and also another thing I noticed was how like aggressive and angry Nunes was in the corner between round 3 and 4. Like, she was sick of this of the tentative game. Also, I noticed as David Bixenspan said, a thinly veiled like timidity warning from Big John McCarthy at the beginning of round 5, and I didn't think that was really called for. Was the fight inactive at times? Yeah, but no more so than any other fights that I've seen. I mean, it wasn't like Tyron Woodley fight or anything like that. So
no, you're absolutely right. The other thing with Big John McCarthy is he was warning Amanda a lot about the hand up, the finger up. Now that's something I want to discuss with you, because I would never, I'm a certified ref, but I would never take a point away from a fighter who continued to do that, because of two things. You're not really hurting your opponent. Okay, so I would warn, and I'd maybe stop the fight, and I would warn again, say, listen, you got to stop doing that, because you could potentially cause damage to your opponent. There could be an eye poke, but you're not really doing, in my opinion, anything technically. It is sort of against the rules, yeah, it is, but it's not. You're not hurting your opponent. Now, if that finger goes in the eye, it's an instant 1-point deduction, because I've warned you X amount of times. So, I mean, what do you think of that whole situation with Big John McCarthy and telling Amanda, hey, you need to stop that?
So I agree with you. I wouldn't take a point away for that. But if I had warned her, then she poked Shevchenko, then you take a point away. Even if, like, because, you know, a lot of refs would wait until like the second eye poke. No. Once you warn them, that's the warning. Like, even if they haven't poked anybody prior, once that poke happens, that's when you take a point away. But Nunes never did that. So no reason to take a point. But the warning, I understand. I'm glad that he warned Nunes about that too. And we got people asking, what did Amanda do to keep the belt? It doesn't matter. Like, I don't think that this is an overall like endorsement of her performance. She won 3 rounds on a couple of scorecards. That's it. I mean, if you're asking me if this were Pride scoring who won this fight, I would say Valentina Shevchenko, and it's probably not even close. But or maybe it's close. I would have it like 10-9 overall. But it wouldn't have even been a hesitation for me. As it pertains to a 10-9 must system across 5 rounds, I got Shevchenko winning it, but it was not like it was close in that regard. Now we got the question of where do each of these women go from here, because there ain't nothing at bantamweight except for Raquel Pennington, who's won 4 in a row. Joe, let's take a look at these rankings, because it is a clown car. Okay. Miesha Tate ain't fighting again. and she got beat for the title last year. Ronda Rousey's probably never fighting again. Shevchenko's lost to Nunes twice. Holly Holm, by all indications, is the one to fight Cyborg. Right now, it's good to be Holly Holm because you probably got your choice of 2 titles. Sara McMann just lost, and boy, will we talk about that later. Kat Zingano hasn't fought or hasn't won in almost 3 years, hasn't fought in 14 months, and hasn't won since before her last UFC title shot. Jermaine Durandamy is not in the favor of the UFC right now and just had hand surgery. Liz Carmouche just never fights. She could put together one more win. I'm sure they would entertain that idea. And Alexis Davis can't win a couple in a row either. Really, all you got is Pennington. That's it. Pennington or Holm, and it's all dependent on what Holm wants to do. And I get the feeling UFC would much rather her fight Cyborg.
Yeah, I think Holm's going to try and well, it all depends on what Holm wants to do as well. But I think that Cyborg fight and Holly Holm fight, it would be absolutely huge for the UFC. I think that'd be great. That'd be fantastic, and I think it'd be good for. But like I said, Holly's got options. I think we need to pay some strict attention to Caitlin Vieira as to what she did tonight with Sara McMann. I mean, if anybody, I think the biggest loser on this card isn't the fact that Shevchenko did not emerge victorious. It's Sara McMann. Because if there was ever a golden opportunity to get that title shot, it was tonight. And live by the sword, die by the sword. She loses via arm triangle choke to Caitlin Vieira. And people were kind of like, oh my God, how can you tap out to that? Watch the replay and watch the spit come out of Sara McMann's mouth right before she taps. And if you've ever been choked before, it doesn't matter what type of choke. I think the only choke that you might not get spit out of would be a good rear naked. Like a Kenny Florian put on a rear naked on me one time. That was one of the tightest rear nakeds I've ever been in. You're usually getting some foam if you're trying to fight it. You either go extremely dry right in the trachea, like really, really dry, or you get this whatever saliva was in your mouth starts coming out. And you saw that with Sara McMann, and it was just like, I can't believe she's tapping to this. So we got to
let's go ahead and talk about that. I mean, Vieira, I thought McMann won that first round. Then Vieira, surprised, like you could hear from the crowd, they were surprised with that body lock takedown that she landed.
That was sick. She timed that beautifully.
She used what has become Sara McMann's signature submission against her, but really varied it up, going across the body with that arm triangle. Not only that, but her body was up against the cage. So it's hard sometimes to get leverage on that because you would like to scoot over to where your whole body is on one side of your opponent and then walk your body up like we saw Martin Kampmann do. Like if you can't figure out how that submission works by watching the Martin Kampmann submission, like it was a tutorial without saying a word. Like it was magnificent. I think McMann won it out, and she has this thing where she gets in really bad positions and she goes blank, Joe. That's been a situation that has undone her for her career. And Vieira did a lot of the same during the first. She was happy to just stay in guard. And but then McMann moved to mount, and Vieira was able to slow that down. And it's almost like with McMann and mount, Vieira knew that she still had a real good shot. And the thing is, McMann stood a decent shot of maybe earning a title shot with a win. Now, it would have helped a lot more had she won and Shevchenko won. And that's probably a fight they could go to in the future, McMann and Shevchenko. But Vieira, she's got I don't want to say got a name about her or anything like that, but she is a bigger girl. I wonder if she'll be able to make the 135.0, the 134.9 limit that is required to contend for a title if she ever gets that opportunity. But she's won 3 in a row, and if Cyborg needed an opponent, you could put her out there.
Absolutely. I think one of the most important things you mentioned in your analogy there was the leverage. Because I didn't have time to rewatch the finish because I was trying to catch up. Anyone that follows my social media, I was at the Jays game today. I took my son to his very first Blue Jay game. So by the time we got back, and Sean knows what it's like to be in Toronto after a Jays game, the mayhem. It's a long drive for me. So I was catching up, and when I saw the submission, I watched the replay again, but I had to catch up because the pay-per-view had already started. I was looking for the leverage. You mentioned leverage. I was looking for the leverage. Where did Vieira have the leverage to really get that squeeze on? Because technically speaking, when you put on a head and arm choke like that, or an arm triangle choke, you need to be off to the side. There's a bunch of different ways you can use leverage. I mean, one of the easiest ways that I was taught was when you have you've got the cup in. When you're driving, you can drive your shoulder in. I mean, I know fighters that would do it on their knees. Renzo Gracie one time taught us to be on our toes, but you have to drive through that shoulder while cranking in to your own. So you're just basically putting on this crazy squeeze. I was looking for the leverage with Vieira, and I was like, where is this coming from? But the squeeze is fantastic because of the spit coming out of McMahon's mouth. So I would love to watch it again and to see that. But yeah, I think you're bang on. I mean, I think she could lose that extra pound to get a title shot, but I mean, we're throwing it out there right now because all we can really say is Pennington or home. But Vieira does have to win, a few more fights, not a few more fights, at least 1 or 2 fights before she's even in that title picture. Do you think there's any chance, and I know it's slim, but I'm going to ask you anyways, do you think there's any chance the UFC would do a trilogy fight with Shevchenko and Nunes?
I don't think so, based on the fact that Dana White didn't want this to headline anyway, and this fight wasn't exactly a banger. And I get the feeling it's not going to draw that well. It didn't. I know it didn't in Edmonton, but it's rough. It's rough. I don't think they'll run a trilogy. I think that they'll find out what Holly Holm wants to do. Tyron Woodley has been pushing Amanda Nunes to fight Chris Cyborg. What do you think about that?
Sold.
Yeah,
you don't have to even do anything. Sold. I mean,
Cyborg's like, I don't know. I don't want to fight Brazilians.
Yeah, that makes
sense. Or anybody that might beat me. One of those things. I don't think Amanda Nunes cares. Amanda Nunes would fight her drop of a hat. She knows it's a good payday.
Oh, yeah.
But I think a lot of it depends on Holly Holm, and that's pretty crazy considering that Holly Holm is like, 1-3 in her last 4 fights, and she holds a lot of cards right now. Shevchenko, what happens with her? Does she fight at 135 or 125?
Next fight, I think, should be at 125. She may not agree to that right now because there's a fair amount of disdain that she's sensing right now or feeling right now based on what happened with this. So you ask her now, she'll fight 135.
Give her 125 division is going to be so good. I can't wait for that division.
It's going to be insane. So, you've been watching The Ultimate Fighter at all?
I didn't set my DVR, so I've missed the first 2 fights. Was thrilled to see that Roxanne Modafferi won her. How funny is that? How funny is that? I was speaking to Jessamine Duke recently, and I was like, what would you have done if 3.5 years ago, when you entered the Ultimate Fighter house, that I would tell you that you and Shayna would be pretty much out of MMA and working a big WWE angle, and that Roxanne Modafferi would be the odds-on favorite to become a UFC champion. I was like, nobody would have thought that. Like, nobody would have seen that coming. Roxanne, who looked like, after that finale, I was like, God, she was one of the first people that I saw and didn't know personally, but I was like, she's too nice. I don't want to see her get beaten up anymore. I got to see her retire. I was like, maybe UFC could make her like the in-cage Japanese translator or something, because she would have been fantastic at that. And then she got with a real camp, and man, she has turned her career around, and she's a good fighter now. She is fun to watch. She is a little bit scary when she gets in there because you couldn't have imagined her being such a relentless finisher, but very, very good to see. And then you got Paige Van Zant fighting at that weight. You got Joanne Calderwood. You got a couple right there. That's 2 decent names that you have already competing in that division. And that just thrills me. It makes me so happy.
Yeah, so Shevchenko is going to have some options as well. I think a lot of these ladies are going to have options. Once that 125 is like truly official, we're going to see some fluctuations. I think
125 and 145 both, because if you get 2 wins in a row at 135, you might be able to contend for a title at 145.
Yeah, you're bang on. Yeah, no, I gotcha.
Let's talk about the flyweight championship fight that didn't happen.
It's hard. I don't know. when I got the news that Borg was out, and I said to myself, "Are you kidding me? Is this really happening? Like, why does this keep happening over and over again? Not just with Borg. I'm not saying with Borg, but just in general. Like, oh my goodness, can we just like last second changes? Why? I don't get it. But you've had some an interesting 12 hours with Ray Borg in general.
It was about a 1 hour window. What happened was UFC on Fox tweeted a video of Tyron Woodley talking about, it was a talking point that I think Karen Bryant or somebody gave to them. Should Mighty Mouse wait for Ray Borg? And in the video, Tyron Woodley said, if this were a habitual thing, if he were a repeat offender, then I would say no, but he's not. But Ray Borg is. He has, and I tagged Tyron Woodley and I said, Tyron, since UFC 201, Ray Borg has missed weight or pulled out of 5 of his 7 scheduled fights, including this one. And Tyron was a good sport about it. He said, why aren't you in my ear giving me stats? Ray Borg did not enjoy it. And it was a lot of deflection. And he went at me. And, of course, he hit me with the, why don't I report a bunch of wrong shit while you come and cut weight? And I'm like, all right, well, cutting weight's not my job. But if it was, I would do it. And I would make weight. And I would do it safely. Also, if you want to do my job, you can't misspell words like you did in that tweet. He later deleted the tweet, and it was the terminology. I'm sure he's had a shit week, Joe. I'm positive the dude had a crappy week. He insinuated that I said that he pulled himself out of this fight. I never insinuated that he pulled himself out of a pay-per-view main event championship fight. The doctor pulled him out. I know because I asked, and I got it confirmed with multiple sources that the doctor pulled him out. He didn't want to be pulled out of this fight. So when I got back to him, I said, okay, maybe didn't make it to 5 out of 7 fights is the terminology I should have used. And he said that he didn't even have a bout agreement for 201. And I said, okay, 4 out of 6 is a pretty shit ratio. Yeah, it's a pretty rough percentage still. Yeah, it's like what, 66%? That's not good. This is missing weight. This is illness, which cutting weight makes you extremely susceptible to illness. And it's, I got the blame, and it ain't my fault. I didn't sneeze on the guy and give him a cold or a viral infection or whatever. I didn't make the dude miss weight repeatedly. I understand he's having a bad week, and he was looking for someone to take his aggression out on, and he later deleted the tweets. But, hey, man, I didn't sneeze on your banana or your Cheerios or on your cinnamon rolls or whatever it is that you eat. I didn't get you sick. Sorry.
Well, good on you. Good on you for doing what you had to do and speaking your mind and getting engaged with that conversation. It is frustrating. And in my opinion, I hate to say Demetrious Johnson should wait for Ray Borg because, I mean, it's a very winnable fight for Demetrious Johnson, so he could eclipse the record and stand alone with the most successful UFC title defenses. But the reality is, do you really want to wait for a gentleman that potentially, like you said, at worst has a 66% pullout record or change record or something like that? I mean, Dillashaw, money fight, or someone. I mean, you just lost a payday, a big payday.
Yeah, one of the the messages were just tired of all you douchebags. He misspelled douche, by the way. So quick to bash us without really knowing what happens. And I'm like, so tell me what happened. I mean,
he called you an email.
I sent an email to his way well before this. I did reach out for comment. I didn't hear back from him. Also, so quick to bash us. I didn't bash anybody. I put forth a fact. That was it.
He called you a douchebag?
Well, I guess it was spelled D-U-C-H-E. So maybe a douchebag. I don't know what a douchebag is, though.
Okay, so it's not as bad as a douchebag.
Then. And he challenged me to cut weight and all this stuff. And I'm like, Ray, I'm a journalist, not a fighter. I don't ask you to write my reports for me. I don't ask you to do the podcasts for me. I don't ask you to tweet on behalf of the Fightful Online account, which you all can follow at Fightful Online or at Fightful MMA. I don't ask you to do that stuff, man. He got really upset. And like I said, I'll chalk it up to him having a really bad week, being sick, probably being irritable, and reading into what I said the wrong way. But what I said was factual. He has been set, whether he signed a bout agreement or not, for 7 fights. 5 of those he did not make it to or missed weight. So, hey.
You're bang on. I've got no rebuttal whatsoever. There is some comedy happening on the live chat. Someone saying that.
And I feel terrible for Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson. I do not feel bad for Ray Borg. I feel bad for Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson.
Well, yeah, of course. Absolutely. This is a guy that had a chance to eclipse the record and of course, get that big payday or a partially big payday. He's never going to be a guy that's going to get massive paydays because of being a champion at 125. But here he is. He would have been headlining a pay-per-view and pay-per-view points. He'd have got some nice zeros in his bank account, let me tell you. But
wonder how much money the UFC would have actually walked away with on this show, because it wasn't going to do a lot of buys. And Demetrious, Amanda Nunes, and even Gilbert Melendez get pay-per-view points on this show.
Yeah.
Which is
yeah.
rough.
Someone on the chat said Demetrious Johnson was afraid to fight TJ Dillashaw. That's why the fight never happened.
Nah. He wanted an incentive financially, and I don't blame him.
I don't know one fighter that's ever been afraid of fighting another fighter. I know fighters that think it would suck to fight another fighter, but they're never afraid. I doubt it. You don't get in the face punching business when you're afraid of people. It doesn't work for me. I don't think so.
Do you think they can do this fight next month?
Yeah, 100%. Or at least 99%.
On UFC 216. I don't even know what's on the show. Ferguson and Lee, that's good. Verdum, Derek Lewis, Van Zant and I, Brooks, Lentz. Yeah, that show, honestly, it could, if you add Mighty Mouse versus Ray Borg to that show, that's the fight that card, I don't want to say needs, but it would help that card.
Yeah, of course it would. I think it'd be a fantastic fight. Why not do it? What could potentially stop that fight?
Ray Borg.
Yeah, I was just gonna say I couldn't even finish my sentence without you saying that. Yes, okay, I got you. But they should postpone it. They should bring that fight a month from now. Put it at UFC 216. I think it's October 3rd or October 6th.
I hope they do, because if Ray Borg doesn't get the shot, I'm probably getting bitched at for it by him.
He's gonna rip you apart moving forward. I love it.
I'm sure he will.
UFC 216 is October 7th. Yeah. So yeah, do it, man. Why not? I don't see it's crazy.
We got to figure out what we're doing for the podcast next week. I'll be in Orlando. Maybe I can do it from there. But the Triple G Canelo fights that night. So shit, I don't know what's gonna go on. Also, I'm trying not to say the F word on the podcast so we don't get demonetized on YouTube. Man.
I was unaware of such intel. Thankfully, I don't curse.
Yeah, right.
Well, I've cursed lately. You and Jimmy are just bad influences on me.
Evidently, Jimmy encourages me on the Listen Your Boy podcast, which you all can check out Wednesdays at 3 p.m. Eastern, to get you to curse.
Does he really say that?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah, without a doubt.
I love Jimmy. What a mess. All right, cool. Co-main event.
What about Dos Anjos? You think he's in line for a title shot? Now, granted, here's what I hate to hear. He said after his win over Magny that he's willing to wait for a title shot. And I'm like, no, don't do that. None of that. Woodley tore his labrum or did something to his labrum. No, don't wait. You got 2 wins in the division. Tarek Safady, Neil Magny, impressive, especially the win over Neil Magny. Very impressive. Your boy is a big fan of the arm triangle choke, but I think he should be staying active instead of just saying he'll wait.
Look, I know fights are risks, Sean. I understand it. We all know a fight, anything can happen. But the way he took out Neil Magny in impressive fashion, I pictured body shots to overhand rights or body shots. Sorry. Oh, yeah. Yeah. What did I say? Body shots, overhand lefts, I think I was mentioning on Tuesday's edition of the Holy Smokes podcast. And I thought that was going to be his game plan. But, man, that fight went down to the ground, and it was just systematic. Just a beautiful, beautiful setup, transition. Just moving that, you know, the little flow chart, going down that flow chart. Thank you very much. Arm triangle choke. He looked fantastic. I think you're right. I think he does need to continue fighting. Don't wait for that title shot. You never know when you're going to get it. You're not getting any younger, son. You got to make money. Put some money away. It's you know, I understand there's risk, but chances are you're going to fight someone that's higher up in the rankings, and you beat them. It's just going to raise your stock value. Get her done.
By the way, Dos Anjos got a performance of the night bonus. Carlos has a little bit of a typo there. He said that Dos Anjos versus Stevens got fight of the night. Melendez versus Stevens got fight of the night. Dos Anjos, Cejudo get performance of the night bonuses. Yeah, I thought that Magny's reach was going to play a role in this fight, but that was immediately negated by Dos Anjos. Now, I want to put over my friend Residency MMA. Imagine this, Joe. Rafael Dos Anjos beats Tyron Woodley for the title.
Mm-hmm.
Let me ask you, who do you think his first title defense is against?
I would go with
Conor McGregor. That's who I'd go with.
Irishman who's on a yacht right now somewhere in Ibiza.
Yeah, that's that fight. So there you go. I was really intrigued to see this ground battle because Magny is really long and lanky, and Dos Anjos couldn't be more different.
One sec there, Sean. If he was to defeat Woodley, he'd get his red panty night.
Oh, yeah.
Because you got Conor,
GSP.
And GSP would be more than happy to fight Dos Anjos. Believe me.
Well, GSP might have to defend his title, but if he has one. But yeah, the Dos Anjos being like completely opposite of Magny physically is what I looked forward to in this. And it didn't disappoint, but Dos Anjos took control, and it's not often you see Neil Magny treated like that on the ground, Joe.
No, not at all. I can imagine what Elliot was thinking when he was watching that, because it was just kind of like, whoa. I mean, it was just a beautiful. I mean, who was the fighter on last week's show that I was kind of just like, this kid's fantastic. I'm trying to remember who it was. Leon Edwards. Leon Edwards' ground game was just absolutely beautiful in that fight versus Brian Barberina. But tonight, Dos Anjos looked just sick. Just the way he did that, to do that against Neil Magny just shows you the different levels of grappling. Like when guys have it and guys can execute it, there's a difference in having the knowledge and training and drilling something, but to be able to execute it is just a different game altogether. And to do it with the risk of being punched in the face, very impressed with the Dos Anjos tonight. Very impressed. But remember, this is a guy that won the title by busting up Pettis' face with orbital bone. That was really loved for his striking. Didn't he outstruck Cowboy, didn't he? Like, he just destroyed him in the stand-up realm. Then he met Eddie Alvarez, of course, but that was a different story altogether. Sure. People have that, but people forgot about his ground game. His jiu-jitsu game was just fantastic.
Well, he reminded people. Also, I got to put over Henry Cejudo, and I thought he beat Benavidez. Man, that guy. And at 30 years old, it looks like he's just getting better and better and better. He said at the post-fight presser that he wanted to see approval from Demetrious Johnson that he improved, and he got that. He definitely got that. He pieced up Wilson Hayes. At no point was this close. After the first exchange, you could see it was a matter of time before Henry Cejudo did something very naughty to Hayes, and he did. He violated Wilson Hayes.
But the thing is, though, like when
Elliot Stabler was on the scene to handle that violation. He was there turning his chair around backwards, trying to interrogate Henry Cejudo. That was a beatdown of epic proportions.
if you were to analyze the way Cejudo was landing those strikes, you can write a chapter on speed, you can write a chapter on distance, you can write a chapter on precision. I mean, it was such an outclass of a performance that it was mind-boggling at times to see how he was landing some of that stuff and the way he was just pouncing on anything Wilson was doing and just making him pay. Going to the cage afterwards and trying to get Demetrious' approval is one thing, but a certain Sean Ross Sapp, whenever he describes the first fight, lends me to believe that Demetrious Johnson doesn't care how good Henry Cejudo looked tonight. He's just like, I'm waiting. You're just another paycheck. No, I'm on another level.
Another thing I want to compliment Cejudo on, you see him and you see Sara McMann. Now, Sara McMann has met some success even after her first loss. And maybe she stepped up her jab. There wasn't a lot else. She got a little more aggressive and worked on her jab. But other than that, we see her fall into the same issues that she gets too complacent. Henry Cejudo isn't complacent and certainly isn't complacent after the Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson loss. I think he was as embarrassed for himself as I was for him when I saw that complete negation of his set of skills that Demetrious Mighty Mouse Johnson showed him. And boy, did he look awesome. He didn't even worry. Like, he wasn't concerned about wrestling Wilson Hayes. He was like, I got this striking, and I'm going to use it, and there ain't a damn thing you can do about it. And if you dare try to wrestle me, we'll see how that goes, too. I loved it. I loved the game, and Henry Cejudo. And don't let the fact that he's 1-1 in his last two fights confuse you. He should be 2-0, and he looked categorically different between the Mighty Mouse fight and the Benavidez fight. So hats off to him. Fun fact, Joe, WWE wanted him in 2014, and he decided to sign with the UFC.
Isn't he too small to do professional wrestling?
Well, here's the thing. Vince McMahon has, like, first off, he wants a star for the Hispanic market.
Mm-hmm.
He wants, like, Cejudo would have been like the Rey Mysterio, and he's also always had this thing for, like, a Mighty Mouse character, which is ironic because UFC has a Mighty Mouse character and doesn't promote him. And for decades, Vince McMahon has wanted a Mighty Mouse character because he just loves that idea. But he ended up signing with the UFC. There were also, I wanted to point out, there were a lot of people who talked about the UFC Reebok kits and stuff, and the one that we mentioned about Demetrious Johnson, and it just says Mighty on it. They couldn't put Mighty Mouse on it. They don't own that.
Correct.
So they had to just put Mighty on there. That's why that happened.
I didn't mind some of the looks tonight. I know I took some shots at it on Tuesday, namely because I couldn't care less about them. And then I saw them. I'm like, they're not too bad. They look pretty good tonight. I'm impressed. I mean, Shevchenko's look nice.
They look better. Yeah, I think there needs to be more fighter input. But
freedom for the fighters. But I think you mentioned on the podcast that they should have some sort of sponsor. That'd be pretty good. At least give them one sponsor. But I get it. I understand it.
Also, before we move on, because we'll have to speed through the rest of this card, Patrick Wyman, who I really respect on Twitter, he said, I'm not ready to call this a trend yet, but having a couple of champions winning slow-paced, uneventful fights is a bad look. I agree, and Joe, I think it's sometimes contagious. I remember when everybody was pumped for that Rashad Rampage fight. It was going to be a knockout. Rashad said, get a snuggie. I'm going to put you to sleep. Boy, he put us to sleep all right. And it seemed like every show for the next 4 or 5 months, there were at least a couple of high-profile fights that were just snoozers. A bunch of cage-clinching bullshit that we witnessed just over and over. And I really hope it's not contagious because, there are a few fights coming up, a few main events coming up that could happen. Dave Branch is a grappler facing Luke Rockhold. You got Shogun versus St. Preux, and you never know how that'll play out when you got such a flash knockout. You got Ferguson Lee, and given their skill sets, that could happen. That ain't happening for Cerrone and Till, though. I don't think so. But yeah, we got other stuff to talk about besides Besides all that, Ilir Latifi beat Tyson Pedro, and Latifi has quietly won 3 of his last 4. Tyson Pedro got dragged into deep waters, and the irony is, even though he's never been after one round or been outside of one round, I thought he looked the best in round 3. This was a learning experience for Tyson Pedro, and he's still super young, so this isn't going to hurt him or anything. I thought he gave up a little quick on his triangle attempts. That was surprising to me. That's really it. Ilir Latifi did what Ilir Latifi does, and he is finding success, and good for him.
Yeah, Tyson Pedro, it sounds weird, but he needed this loss. He needed this experience. He needed to understand that it's a different ball game in the UFC when you start getting past the first round. Giving up on that triangle, I guess you could understand it when you're trying to triangle someone that doesn't have a neck, or it's got a back the size of a pickup truck. But I get it, I understand it, and I think Tyson Pedro needed this learning experience. I think he's going to be better for it. Not everyone goes undefeated. Not everyone has a spectacular run in the UFC that doesn't last that long. So good for Ilir. I mean, I don't understand why DC and Rogan were calling him Latifi when it's Latifi. They kept calling him Latifi all night, but it's Latifi. And good for him. I don't know what this really means for Latifi winning this fight, because we all know he's not going to ever be a champion in this division, and he's never going to fight Gustafsson. So we'll see what happens. But Tyson Pedro, it's not the last we're going to see of this guy. I think it's going to be fine. I think he's going to learn from this, and we'll see where he goes from here. Yep.
I agree with virtually everything you said. When it comes to Stevens Melendez, do you think they booked this and said, well, at least one of them's got to win?
No, but I understand your analogy. It was a tough fight for me to watch. Obviously, Gilbert's someone I've known for a long time.
Who's that?
Melendez.
Oh, Giblert. Giblert, you mean?
Oh, Giblert. Yeah, I remember that.
He should have came back during his USADA suspension with a mask, a luchador mask on, as Giblert.
Giblert. Gotcha. But the minute the fight started and he came out with that stance, I said, there's going to be kicks. There's going to be kicks. So if you're prepared to take the kicks and you start checking them, awesome. If you don't check them, it's not going to look good. It's not going to feel good, and it's going to be big trouble in the fight. And very surprised Gilbert didn't check the kicks early on. And you know what? It is what it is. You lose.
Gilbert has lost very often recently. He's lost 4 in a row. He's 1-5 in the UFC. Has not landed a takedown in the USADA era. Interesting. Mm-hmm. Jeremy Stevens had his best performance was up until Gilbert fell the first time. Then after that, he got a little more careless, and ironically, Gilbert found the most success that he would have in the fight. My question is, what was Nate Diaz saying to Gilbert Melendez in between the rounds?
I don't know.
Did you hit him in the face? I don't know then.
Yeah, I don't know if you should ever have a Diaz in your corner, unless it's strictly there for motivation. Because I don't know.
Fucking hit him and stuff. Did you do that? I don't know, dude.
No, I got you. I don't. I mean, they're great training partners. They're fantastic fighters. I don't know that their coaching advice is sound. If that's fair.
Yeah. Towards the end of the fight, Stevens was picking his shots. Melendez would get off balance when he switched to southpaw. Stevens started circling through good power shots, mixed in knees, which I liked. This was all Stevens, and he was nice to Gilbert Melendez. I'll say that. He showed Melendez a lot of respect and let him go out in a more respectable manner. Do you think this is the last time we see Gilbert? Now, a lot of this depends on his contract, which I don't know the terms of, because he could have like a no-cut clause in his contract that keeps him fighting.
I don't think it's the last we've seen of Gilbert Melendez. I mean,
in the UFC, I don't think there's any way it's the last time we see him fight. Not with Scott Coker out there giving people money.
Yeah, that was going to be my next point there. I think he's got one more fight left in the UFC. I think this a test at featherweight. I think he's not in that BJ Penn stage where he should not be fighting. I think clearly he made a mistake tonight which is not checking the leg kick and perhaps the stance, and something he could learn from. But his record over the past 4 or 5 fights have not been has not been fantastic at all. I mean, the guy's like, he's lost 4 in a row, 5 of his last 6.
Ain't no way he should be in those rankings.
At this point, no. At this point,
and Stevens shouldn't be in the featherweight top 10, much less ahead of Darren Elkins, who's won like 4 in a row. Hey, guys, if you are listening on YouTube or watching on YouTube, leave us a thumbs up. Subscribe to us. You can also subscribe on iTunes, Stitcher, Libsyn, Player FM, all that stuff. Really helps us. Head over to the Fightful.com forums. Show us some love there. We're always doing contests over there. Lots of cool stuff there. And if you want to check out more of our podcasts, including our archived shows with tons of UFC, WWE, Global Force Wrestling, independent wrestling personalities, head over to FightfulPods.com. There were some happenings on these prelims, too. First off, Sara Moras's armbar, outstanding. Evan Smith tried to create space by putting her foot on Moras's face, but if you take a look at Sara's legs, if she gets that far on an armbar, you're not getting out of it. It's just a matter of time.
Yeah, it was a great setup, a patient setup. She decided, I'm going for it. I'm keeping it until you give me a reason to let go of this thing or transition to something else or go right back to guard. I'm going to keep working this thing. And I mean, she had the attempt on for a good, correct me if I'm wrong, at least a minute 30, if not a minute 45 before she actually locked it in. So good on her for staying with it, keeping it tight, adjusting, and getting the finish, which is kind of gross as is, but good on her.
I mean, this is a girl who hadn't fought in 2 years, hadn't won in 3 years, because she had a big year gap in between her first and second UFC fight. When she was on The Ultimate Fighter, she was like 4 fights in and like freshly, like I think when she tried out, she was 24. When she got on the show, she was 25. And to lose, really, I don't want to say lose those years. She fought 3 times in this period, but those are some key years to miss out on. And that's a bummer. But now she sits at 2-1 in the UFC, 4-2 if you want to count her Ultimate Fighter fights. So good for her. I'm glad to see her win, and I'm glad to see her win in Canada. So that was good on her. Ref was a little late on the – well, I don't want to say late. He wasn't there at all. Sara gave up the arm once she felt it pop. And then afterwards, when Joe Rogan said, yeah, I think it popped, she goes, I hope it did.
Yeah, I was just like, what did you say, Sara? Why would you say that?
Oh, man, I love it. I thought it was great for her career that she did.
Yeah.
While we're talking about refs, I want to talk about judges, Joe.
Mm-hmm.
If you hear that a 30-24 scorecard exists, what does that tell you about the fight?
There's a good chance the referee should have stopped that damn thing.
Yeah, if you get a 30-24 scorecard, then that fight should have never made it to that scorecard. That's why that shouldn't exist, because the fight shouldn't have went that time. What the hell was Gavin Tucker's corner thinking? Gavin Tucker's corner or the ref didn't give a shit about him. He looked like he shoved his head into a beehive and said, "Bring it on."
It's the type of fight that when you watch and you look and you're just thinking to yourself, this is not a good look for anybody. It's not a good look for the fighter winning. It's not a good look for the fighter taking the abuse. It's not a good look for the referee. It's not a good look for the sport, not a good look for the UFC. Like, there's a reason why there's referees, for the safety of the fighter. And in my opinion, I could see that Gavin was still having those little bursts of fighting back, but then there was just an accumulation of what Rick Glenn was doing. That's it. Let it go. It's done. It's done. He doesn't need any more of this abuse. Take the loss, go back, learn from it, and come back stronger. I mean, was it Joe that said, or Rogan that said that, this is going to haunt Gavin Tucker for a very, very long time. These are the types of beatings that you never forget.
Yeah, and the sad thing is, I mean, he's a 31. Like I said, he's not a kid or anything, but he'd never experienced that before. Not at least in the case. He was 10-0, and Also, when he came into the UFC, his thing was that he finished, and he finished often.
Yeah.
And now he's got 2 fights. His first fight went to a decision, and he won. The second one, he got his ass just handed to him. And Rick Glenn looked awesome. That, I don't want the whole story to be about how bad the ref is and how sad this is for Gavin Tucker, because Rick Glenn looked awesome, especially his clinch work, and especially him creating space, closing distance, throwing elbows, throwing knees, throwing uppercuts in that clinch. I thought looked outstanding. Just 28 years old to make that, and he stepped into the UFC and lost his first fight, and that sucks for him, but he did it in a really, really good fight. So I think he's made quite the impression over his first year in the UFC, and I can't wait to see this guy fight again. But what the hell's he doing with that mustache?
Not a fan?
Man, what's he doing?
I got
Mitch Clark retired. That was sad.
Yeah, it was sad. I mean, but it comes to a point in everyone's career when you realize, okay, you know what? If I can't win against Alex White, and my goal is to become a champion one day, I've been here long enough. I've taken enough abuse. It's done. It's over. You move on.
Sure, I thought this fight was probably losers probably getting a pink slip anyway, but Mitch Clark can never put it together in the UFC. He had that really, really good, great, awesome, impressive win over Ally Quinta that just keeps looking better every time Ally Quinta fights. Mm-hmm. And he picked up a little extra money for that. But other than that, like, the guy never fought more than once a year in the UFC. And first off, if you want to make it a career, you can't do that. It's tough to do it like that. And if you're not making it your career, then it's really tough to make it to those high levels of the UFC. So, glad to see that he got to go out in Canada, but that was a bummer. Cajun Johnson's KO was cool, but that fight's not worth talking about. I had a lot of people asking about Jinder Mahal, WWE champion, why he wasn't there. Bular spoke after his win, said that because Jinder Mahal lives in Tampa, that he had to tend to his 4 properties, his dog, things like that, wasn't able to make it up to Edmonton. So that's why no Jinder Mahal, no modern-day Maharaja at UFC 215. Joe, anything else coming out of this show?
I think, like I said, the biggest loser in this show was not Valentina Shevchenko, was the fact that Sara McMann had a title shot. Gone. I think she would have got that title shot. And other than that, that's pretty much the basics there. I mean, we talked about Cejudo being absolutely fantastic and Dos Anjos potentially in line for a title shot. Don't wait for it. Take it. Take another fight. But other than that, your little tiff with Ray Borg was fantastic.
I don't hold anything against Ray Borg. It was fun. It was nice content for the show. Ray, I hope you get your title shot, and I hope when you do it, you're healthy and you make weight and you do well. Best of luck. But we are back Tuesday with the Holy Smokes MMA podcast at 3 p.m. Eastern. And, of course, we have post-Raw, post-SmackDown shows. Got to figure out what we're going to do with the MMA show, the boxing show. I got to figure that out. I'll be in Orlando at that time. Maybe we'll do a show Sunday. I don't know what the hell we'll do. But you could also check out the List and Your Boy podcast, another one of our flagship shows, along with Holy Smokes, Wednesday, 3 p.m. Eastern. You can check out all of our shows at FightfulPods.com. Use our forums. Also, we're going to be changing our posting method on Fightful.com. Interested to see how that works out, probably in about a week and a half or so. We got all your news, results, photos, videos, podcasts, anything you can ask for over at Fightful.com. And you can support us by going to ProWrestlingTees.com/Fightful. Got plenty of shirts up there for you. Joe, what else you got, my friend?
That's it. Looking forward to next weekend's show. Kamaru Usman's on that show, or the next UFC show. For Tuesday's Holy Smokes podcast, if all goes well and you think John Jones cheated,
oh yeah,
I know somebody that will join us, hopefully, fingers are crossed, that will confirm that John Jones cheated. and or explain why he believes people like John Jones can take something after the weigh-ins and can have it disappear out of their system within a certain period of time, but John got caught. So I'll find out more tomorrow if he can join us on Tuesday. But after speaking with him, and I said, "Would you mind coming on the podcast?" He said, "Yeah, why not?" And I said, "All right, we will get this done." So hopefully, cross my fingers. You want to tune into Tuesday's podcast. Pay attention to my social media at Showdown Joe and Sean's at Sean Ross Sapp. If I can confirm this interview and I can get it recorded on record, it will air on Tuesday.
Couple of quick notes before I wrap it up. David Shaw, UFC exec, says that there was an inflow of refunds after the Demetrious Johnson fight was canceled, but ticket sales afterwards exceeded the refunds. They did a live gate of 2.03 million. Attendance was 16,232. He also mentioned GSP's return as being a shot in the arm for Canadian business. So we'll have more on that Tuesday. Follow us cross-platform at Fightful Online and Fightful.com. Until next time, guys, we're out.